All right, we'll move on. We have average Nexus players. We have the boys. On this team, we have Ninja, Crow, Exile, Benny, Axiom. Predicted 9th, finished 9th, so we got another one right. In terms of significant stats, we had Benny drew with quite a few people with like their third lowest denial average on himself. So well done, Benny, to take in like some pretty clean bases. In terms of how the team plays strategically, so we had Benny was their last line. Exile was like the main door defender. Ninja was also a door defender, but more of like a floaty mid kind of door defender. Hence his like very, very good tag ratio and like pretty good average score. Axiom was captaining, leading the game from lead attack, and Crow was their opening batsman. Hence his 1.2 base average. So yeah, I think this team had some really good looks. They had some really, really good games. There was a couple times where, they had some rough games and they were able to bounce back really well. But there was also some games where they, they had a rough game and then that would turn into another rough game and then another rough game just because people started getting in their own heads and stuff. One thing I will say is there's many different kinds of tilt. But, I think there's the tilt where you take it out on others, and there's the tilt where you're like, oh my god, I'm the worst player in the world. Just kick me off the team already. They have a lot more of that second type of tilt, which is like, it's still really bad. But I think in terms of like the team cohesion and stuff, it's like better, right? Like you're not screaming at your teammates and you're like, dude, like these guys are your friends and you're treating them like ass. So, there was a bit of tilt throughout the comp, which, but hopefully they'll be able to, start dealing with that. And then obviously, like, if they keep training and they go to pre-nats 2, they're going to have more success. So, like, there's going to be less reasons to tilt, right? In terms of how they played, I think it was just a very standard, like, 3D, 2A, try and get bases, field point where you can. Very standard game. Crow did had some, like heaps of really good games. He did have a pretty high deny average on him. Actually, no, he had a very good denies on other people. So, him being out on attack quite a lot of the time, my guess would be that was just from like the opposing attacking team. So, well done, Crow. That's a pretty good stat there. And the 1.2 base average is also like pretty damn good as well. Yeah, did you verse these guys much yourself?
I think maybe once.
Once?
Yeah. Like they're a solid team. Their pack and facts are all pretty solid. Especially like, yeah. I think Benny a lot of the time, from what I saw, he looked a little bit lost when he was outside the base. I think a little bit of sort of moving around, using your panels, making sure you're reactivating cover, because I think he was a really good last line, but whenever he was out of the base, he kind of looked a bit lost. So I'd just say maybe a bit more sort of observation and try to still play when you're outside the base, kind of would be what I'd say there. But yeah, just generally solid pack-on-pack players. I think it's a bit surprising they finished this low considering how in form they looked, but yeah, they're in the mid-tier where every team from now on, very solid players.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you know what sort of went wrong towards the end of the comp for these guys?
I think it was a bit of that tilt factor. People starting to get like down and like doubting themselves and stuff, which can spiral out and stuff, obviously. But yeah, I think it's just a case of like all the teams from now, like we had the bottom 4 teams where like any of them could have swapped and they did. Now like these middle 4 teams, like any of them could have swapped, and it's just like these guys ended up in 9th. So I don't think their losses like on the last day were like super like massive losses either. Like, couple things could have changed and they could have won. I did see one game in the Cascade, I think, where they were winning the game and then Crow was defending on red and he was doing really well. but then his trigger got like jammed.
Oh
Like
no.
it got stuck in the pack and it wasn't
Yeah.
coming out. So he had to pack swap, and then as he was pack swapping, they dropped a base, and that lost them a game.
Oh, that's
So
rough.
yeah, they had a bunch. I think they had a couple things like that like really like got on their nerves, because it's like, you know, things that are like kind of out of your control. They're super frustrating.
No. Honestly, props to this team. They were the guys who played in the game where the reload stopped working, and we're kind of just like, hey, these stopped working. We seem to be the only team that had issues with them, and it's like, that's really bad. Were you guys happy to let the game stand, or we can replay it if you like? And they're like, nah, it's cool. We're probably gonna lose anyway. It's like, that is so kind of these guys. Like, I did just really appreciate how cool they were about the situation.
Yeah, they're all good blokes for sure. In terms of standout player, it was actually Benny for me. So when he was in that last line position, he was doing, like, when I was watching the cameras and stuff, he was doing like really well. And he had a couple games where he had like I think their like really big game. They might have had the highest score of the comp, like in a game. They had they got like a 62k game, and I'm pretty sure Benny was like really high up there. So
that's sick.
What you were saying about him looking lost outside of the base makes sense, because he spent most of his time in the base.
Yeah.
But in terms of attitude, that was the big thing that stood out to me. Like, I was talking a lot about tilt from certain players. Benny was not one of them. He's the youngest player on the team, which, you know, you might expect that the youngest player would have the most tilt, but he like wasn't. And also he was being like really proactive. Like, they would come out of a game, he would look at the scoreboard. He's not even the captain. He'd be like, all right, guys, like, let's go team chat. Like, you, let's go. So that was really cool to see him being proactive and, you know, just a really good attitude. Young player. You know, if we see him at the next couple pre-nuts, I suspect that he will get really, really good.
Yeah, that's sick. Because I did say that thing earlier, but I do genuinely mean that as advice, to hope he improves, because I definitely don't think he was the weak link on the team, which for how experienced that team is a very good thing to not be the weak link. And like, he definitely contributed to the team's success where there was some.
Yeah. In terms of so this team, for the most part, I think will be sticking together.
Sick. I thought
I
Ninja wasn't
don't.
playing.
So yeah, he might not be playing, but the base 4, I think we're the same, that we're gonna have to pick up a player or two, obviously. But
So
I don't know if they'll be at pre-nuts 2. I think they'll probably try to get to pre-nuts 3, but obviously they'll definitely be at nuts. But in training at home, they've been doing really well. You know, like pretty much all of them were already back. Like we flew back Monday morning, and they were at training Monday night, and they were like keen to like just get right back into it. So and they had some good games like that night as well. So if they just keep training, I think they've got a good standard game. I think they just need to keep, you know, adding those like little 1%ers to like their individual skills and their in terms of like how they adjust in the game to like different game states. Also picking up, they'll need to pick up a couple players, I believe. So if they can lock that in ASAP, train as much as possible, play hard. Yeah, I see these guys, you know, definitely being in the top 15 at nationals.
Yeah,
sure.
Sounds good. Very keen to see them back at a future pre-nuts or something.
Alrighty, on to from average Nexus players in 9th, we have Hobart Archangels, 8th place. Worth noting, at one point in the comp, they were in 3rd place. So kudos to these guys. They had some really, really, really good games. On this team, we had Jellyhawk, Sega, Mantis, Easy Point, Shurikitty, and Villain. These guys didn't get denied much. We had 2 players that were drew for 2nd on denies on them, and then 2 that were drew for 3rd. So they were getting some clean, bloody bases. I'll let you guys you take these guys away, since they're your home people.
Yeah, I think this that denied column is really interesting, because I think that kind of shows the difference between these guys and Hellspawn. So like some games they go back and forth, but like in the long run, it's kind of these guys that actually have the comms on the door and the awareness to take their bases cleanly when their teammates are calling for them and all that good stuff. So that just a bit of a bump up in experience and skill there. These guys, can we just say how good our predictions were? They struggled in round robin as predicted. They picked it right up in Cascade 1. as predicted. And then they choked in finals as predicted. Whoops. Nah, these guys were playing really, really well as soon as they found their cohesion throughout the competition. They're really solid, especially in those low base games. That's, I think, how they were able to climb so high and beat such high tier teams, is because their low base games, when they were just controlling the arena, kind of a home field thing, but they knew how to control it well, and their defense wasn't dropping easily from what I saw. I think they mainly had Jellyhawk on last line, and he's not an easy kill. So yeah.
Yeah, pretty massive tag ratio from Jellyhawk, 1.56. I think he was just outside of making like the top 3 tag ratio.
I was gonna say that seems like one of the upper ones I've seen. Yeah, no, he insanely well as last line and could back it up once he left the base too, from what I saw. Very solid team. I think they just need a bit more experience in those lower tier games. So I think it's kind of the symptom of like training against us and Hellspawn the whole time, is all 3 of us are just training for those like high tier strategies, because we're kind of all doing similar things. So that when they kind of start versing the bottom half of the competition, they're kind of less adapted to deal with it when people start dumping and just getting a whole bunch of each other's bases. They needed to pull the trigger earlier a lot of the time, unfortunately, with their attack. I think this maze is all about, as soon as the game starts opening up, you want to be the ones to open it, or you want to be opening it with it. You can't keep on trying to run those low base games when it starts to open. So yeah, that'd be the main thing. I think slightly over defensive at times, and probably just not meeting up enough for attacks.
Yeah, right. Who was your stand-up player on this team over this comp?
I mean, it's gotta be Jelly, right? Said it before the comp, he was gonna go amazing. He actually didn't make the cut for this team in Bendigo, and he got on the team this time, and he proved he deserved it.
Yeah, he's like, and I'm here to stay.
Yeah,
guys.
literally.
1.56 average tag ratio. That.
Exactly. So like, based in Anchor, but also 0.9 destroys per game, which is quite a lot. It's not far off the rest of the team, and it's quite high in comparison to other teams as well. So yeah, I think really solid player there. But I think the main strength of this team is it's a squad of 6 that are all pretty similar to each other. They're not just like, there's no weak players on the team really that you can just walk up to a door and go, I'm just going to shoot them, and that's the obvious weak link in the base. There are 6 guys that have been developing around each other, and they're all developing at similar rates. So they're kind of all relatively even, which helps out a lot in those low base games especially.
Yeah, I admittedly don't remember versing this team very much. I think it was probably, like you were saying, like they like to play a defensive floaty type, like field pointy, heavy defense type strategy, and I was last line, so I didn't go. I probably saw like a couple of them a couple of times, and that was it.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I do remember I went to, I think they were green, and I went there and I got denied once, maybe twice by these guys.
Yeah.
So, is that the game where there was a game on green where I got 2-shot denied right at the end, and that cost us first. I don't know if it was to these guys. It was either these guys or Luna lads.
I do know that these guys' games always seemed close. They were either winning by 200 points or losing by 200 points. Like every time we watched them play, it was a roller coaster watching them through. So I think that's actually like pretty solid awareness from the captain to be so close even in your losses.
Yeah. Well, in terms of things they can improve on, I think just obviously they're going to have Helios still at home, so like they're going to be able to practice a lot of the, get even better at the whole phase of discipline and stuff, and the timing. It's just, again, like we always say all the time, you need to be able to play in multiple game states, not just like your preferred game state, and you need to know like when to pull the trigger to like make a change to a more aggressive state, or and things like that. So I guess that's just the generic advice I could give this team, is just don't be a one-trick team that's just really good at one thing, but when you're in any other game state it doesn't work. Like you need to you need to get comfy in like every situation, especially the situations where like you are having to climb back from like a deficit of like a base or field points or something.
Yeah, man. Looking at the stats on this team, like I was just looking at all the tag ratios, pretty much all positive, good score ratios to good average scores. Like they're all playing well. It's just, I think they're just not experienced enough in these sort of mid-tier games. I think Prenuts 1 will really, really help them out in that. And I think come Nationals, these guys are going to be really strong.
Hoorah. All right. Do you have any last thoughts on these guys?
Nah, I think all good from me.
Happy days. All right. Moving on to 7th place. Can't face her. Final placing 7th. Predicted placing 4th. So this is the first like big mover, I guess, in terms of predictions. We were off by 3 places. On the team, we had Raven, Chutch, Whippet, Arcane, and Shifter. In terms of significant stats, Raven had the 3rd highest denies on other people. Arcane had the 2nd best denies on other people. And Shifter was drew with a bunch of other people in terms of like third place for like being denied. So Shifter was getting some clean bases. That being said, she was the last line. And generally, the last line will get their bases, like the easier ones, right? Like you'll leave them in there until like there's a dump base, and so you go get the dump base, and then come back, get back in your bloody hole, get back in your spot. Yeah. How many times did you verse these guys?
I think twice against these guys from memory. Maybe 3 times even. Well, we actually versed these guys a bit.
Yeah. So we versed them 3 times. They beat us twice. And you know, it was pretty rough. Listen,
how many of those times did Chutch have 16k?
Yeah. So what I was gonna say is the losses okay. So the first loss, I think they actually played like really well. Hold on, is my webcam frozen? Is it frozen for anyone else? Okay, it was frozen for a sec on my screen, but it looks like it's okay now. I think I pressed a button. Whoops. Anyway, I'm tripping. All right, maybe I am. So the first game, I distinctly remember they like got quite a lot of our base. Like they beat us, like we were blue, and they were the first team that I had where I was like playing in that sandwich, like between the sandwich and the pillar in blue as the last line. They were the first team we came up against that was actually setting up like pins where like they would like both be on the same door. One would like pin you so that you can't like effectively shoot the other person. The other person would lunge you out. And they got like 3 bases on us like that. So they had a really effective attack on us, which put us in a bit of an awkward spot. So that was that game. Obviously there's a bunch of other stuff that happened. But the really rough one was basically there was a dump. We were green. Can't face her was red, and the dump came to us first. And Chutch, Chutch, knowing how like we like to deal with dumps and stuff, decided she was going to completely ruin our lives for 12 minutes. It was so frustrating. Like all the little things we do, you know, she was. I think so. Raven was captaining, but Chutch took the lead in this game, and she was making calls on behalf of the team.
Oh, that's so funny.
It just completely ruined our life. Every single thing we tried to do, she countered it like straight away. You know, she knew what we were gonna do before we were gonna even like doing it. Yeah, Raven saying we lose the Chutch. It was strategically brilliant. Yeah. That was the game she got like 16k or something ridiculous, like 80 something tags, I think. And what was so the game before that, I was green and there was a dump situation, and I was like, yeah, I found like this spot on this door I really liked, and I was like getting heaps of pack, and I got like 15k that game. And then I tried to use that exact same spot. I told Chutch that I like that spot, and I think she made a point of just like completely ruining me there.
Oh, that's amazing.
You know, Mikey was saying like he had a bunch of times he tried to go deal with Chutch, like cause she was just like at the back, like absolutely destroying us, letting like the dump team like go through the base. We had the dump for like 2 minutes, I swear, 3 minutes, and they were at their team for the rest of the game. But yeah, Mikey went to go contest Chutch a bunch of times, and Chutch every time was like, "No, Mikey, go away, Mikey. This is my game, Mikey."
That's amazing.
So that's like when I think of this team, it's hard to like picture it because that was the last game we versed them as well. It's hard to like really picture or remember anything else other than that because it's just it's scarred me. It's gonna live with me for the rest of my life. Just Chach absolutely destroying us, and I can't wait to have her back for the future tournaments. Yeah. Well, did you have any observations of this team when you played them?
I think they thrived in the mid tier. When we versed them, it felt like they weren't quite prepared. Their defense was often dropping a bit quick. I think the way they were holding blue base was a bit exploitable. They were holding from pillar, which meant that it was quite easy to get a double on pillar because they were holding so close to the door. So you could kind of double, and then that just breaks open the opportunity because the anchor's dead.
Yeah.
So that was a bit exploitable, unfortunately. So they were kind of dropping early bases, which you kind of wouldn't really expect from this team. I think they were playing a bit more offensively than we were expecting. But yeah, they were dropping some bases earlier. Were they generally a defensive team when you were versing them, or what were they
I think
doing?
it was pretty standard. It was Shifter last line, Whipper Arcane on the doors, Raven leading the games, captaining, and Chach was like their first out. Was the general structure from my opinion. Raven is in the chat, so she can correct us if we're wrong. But that was my impression from like speaking with Lauren about how their games were going and stuff.
Yeah. I think the times we versed them, we were just kind of exploiting phaser shots and stuff like that when they were defending, which kind of led to early drops. And then it kind of snowballed from there, and they'd kind of have to play super offensive, and I don't think that's where they thrived. There was a time where they kind of dumped, and the team was a bit of a mess. I'm not gonna lie. Chach just kept on being like, "Hey, can we please attack here? Where are we? What are we doing?" And it was just, it was a bit painful to watch. I think
that can probably be attributed to, we were saying in the predictions when we were talking about what might be like the thing that lets this team down is the fact that they made a point of forming this team where each player was from a different state. So like the synergy is like as far away as it could have been.
100%, and that definitely factored into it so much. I think these guys were really good when the game was going on track and going according to plan, and they were like pulling some really good wins when that was happening, and like consistently beating those mid-tier teams when the game was going according to plan. But because they don't play together, like it's just hard to get that reactive synergy where you go, okay, this happened, we need to react by doing this, and it's very hard to get that happening quickly. So I think they were just very clearly not trained together. So like it's just tough with a team like this. I think they played really well for like how much they played together, honestly.
Yeah. Big kudos. They did have some, like you were saying, like when things went well, they had some like really good games, took some scalps, but just struggled on that, like what's next once like things don't go your way straight away. But that's to be expected from a team of people from every different state. Do you have a standout player for you on this team? And why is it Chach?
It's got to be Chach, right? Like, I don't know. The games I saw where they were winning, Chach was just massively in the field points. Had a really good presence in the game. I think you're talking about presence a lot. I think Chach is one of those players that just occupies space very well and really restricts the movement of other players. So when she can play that mid role, it's very powerful against a lot of teams.
Yeah, she's so she's always like in the past played more defensive positions, like on doors, and like Darwin, like we played her a bit more like aggressively, like if you remember, like the lighthouse position. Pretty much every game we just had her in the lighthouse, and so that was her like starting to get more into that field point game. This pre-nuts, she was like the opening batsman for the team, hence her like high like base average 1.3. which isn't a position she's ever like really played before. Like she's done a bit in training, but like at a competition, she's never been the opening batsman. You're getting bases first. And she was like, just like speaking to her during the competition, she was saying that she was like really developing her confidence because she was just like, well, I need to get these bases, so I'm just gonna like bang, I'm just gonna take this thing. You know, there'll be times in the past where like she'll shoot literally everyone, get into the base, and she'll hesitate putting the shot on the base just because she's not comfy there, not confident there. But yeah, I think she was able to kind of delve into that part of the game a lot more, and she's kind of realized, oh, I can actually do like this as well. So who knows? I think given the confidence she had from this, you'll most likely see her doing some more base, like attacking and getting bases oriented stuff on Aftershock in the future. Because I'm those days are past me. I'm done being the guy getting bases. I'm happy to just sit in the base and last line and
hit the early 20s and time for retirement.
Look, my knees, my hip, I'm getting a bit.
Oh man.
No, it'll be between Chach and I think. Like we don't actually know yet, but my impression is that it'll be between Chach and I doing like opening batsman and like the second one now.
That's sick. That should be fun to watch.
Yeah, so we'll see you there. Raven, yes, she does have a lot more to her game, and Aftershock will absolutely be letting her loose to just ruin everyone else's lives now, not just ruin our lives when we versa. Cool. Do you have any last things for this team?
I think all 5 very solid players. You look at the tag ratios and stuff, they all kept up really well. It's literally just they're all from different states, so how far can you expect a team like this to push?
Is this the first team with all positive tag ratios? Hold on. I think Archangels.
I think it might be.
Archangels just missed out. So this is our first team that had all positive tag ratios across the board. So
nice.
Kudos to Can't Phase her. Alrighty. Well done. Hope to see you guys you in future tournaments. Yeah. Good stuff. I guess we didn't talk about like things they can improve on, but it's hard because like they're all from different states. So I guess the generic just getting more used to Helios 2, I think, is the only real advice that we can give.
Maybe follow when you're a less experienced team, try to maybe follow the defensive structures of other teams, look at them really closely and study them, and maybe follow that a bit more. And yeah, see if you can iterate on it from there, maybe.
We've got Whippin and Raven dropping 2024 in the chat, so maybe this team is going to be making a return next year.
Keen as, it was great to have them.
All right. Keen to see it. Next team, we have Canberra Crustaceagons. Final placing 6th. Predicted placing 6th. We're just too good. We don't even need to play these pre-nets at this point. We'll just predict it, and then it's over. Man. On the team, we had VG Master, Gustus, Dragon, Garn, and Tobo. And we had VG Master was in terms of stats that were impressive, had the 3rd best average score, 3rd best score ratio, and the 3rd best GRC. Also like a damn good base average of 1.3. Pretty good, 0.6 denies, and didn't get denied too much. But yeah. Do you want to talk about this team?
I want to say we predicted this one pretty well. I think these guys really stomped the bottom half of the competition with just aggressive play, high base games. VG Master just going off, walking his teammates through bases. But as soon as they kind of got to those harder games where you've got sort of 5 solid players that one player can't just walk a teammate through or anything, and that sort of stuff where it's a bit harder to play offensively, I think these guys started to struggle, and they kind of just hit that wall of where those aggressive strats work a lot less well. I think VG was kind of very fluctuating with the scores. Against lower teams they'd be insane, and against higher teams it'd be a bit less so.
What was I gonna say? Yeah, so when I was talking about like us reacted to dumps poorly, like one of those dumps was Canberra Crustaceagons dumping to us, and we did not react well at all, and they absolutely steamrolled that game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those things, like, if this team can get a roll when they do those aggressive things, it's pretty damn hard to catch up. Like, they know how to do it. They set up and field pointing spots very effectively, like, once they're getting close to finish. It's hard to catch up once it gets a roll. But, like you were saying, you know, it gets to a point where those super aggressive strats just don't work against, like, higher tier teams. You know, you just end up giving away more pack points than you gain when you do it. And, you know, you're not even necessarily getting bases off of it as well. Something interesting I did see them do a couple times. We've asked them quite a few times. So the first time they did it, so at the starts of their games, sometimes they were doing a dump slash, like, just like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And they would go to a base, bang, try and get 1 hit, spend like 2, maybe 3 lives, and then they went home. The first game they did it against us, I don't think they got anything, but the second time they did it, they did get a base off of it, and then they went home. That was an interesting strat. I've not really seen that before. Like, I've seen like blitz 3-man attacks, but like, I'm pretty sure they did it with more than 3. Correct me.
I think this might be the only maze where it's actually viable, because we started to see it quite a bit towards the end of the competition. Even your team was doing it quite a lot. There's those, because the bases are so close, you can coordinate these really fast hits with a lot of people, which will still get back in time to hopefully not drop any bases before your anchor dies. And because the bases are less lockable than Darwin, a lot of the time, if you just send numbers to base, you'll often get in. So I'm really keen to see how that strategy evolves, of these quick 3-man hits or 4-man hits, just bang, and then straight back before the other team has time to punish it. I think it's a really cool way to play this arena.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think, you know, maybe the adjustment we'll see is teams getting ready, like, for when that happens. And if it goes to them, like the blitz goes to them, you treat it like a dump, you crunch home, and you just, like, annihilate it and get them to, like, go away, leave.
Yeah.
But if you see them do it to the other team, then maybe that's your opportunity to do the same thing to them. And get a, you know, you have to be quick. You'd have to be in field pointing positions close-ish to the base to probably pull it off. But, you know, maybe that'd be a adjustment we see in the future. But then also, and then the next adjustment you see is that teams never do it when those teams are in those field pointing positions, because they know they're going to drop one.
I think we actually did see games where there were 3 teams willing to do blitz attacks, and you'd see attack goes to here, and then in response they send a different attack down to here, and then they send a different attack back to here. It was just absolute chaos to watch, but it was so cool. Like, I don't think we've seen that sort of strategy in a very long time, and it was
actually, I remember it might have been Golden Game 1 where, was it a Golden Game, or it might have been the second finals game where we were red, and then Sunshine Coast Isotopes were blue, you guys were green. And then, like, we're trying to do, like, those kind of blitz stuff to green to, like, get your bases. And then, like, literally every time we did that, we didn't adjust during the game, but, like, 5-10 seconds later, we had Isotopes come to us with 3.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we weren't getting your base. We were having a bunch of issues with that. But they were getting our base, and we were like, damn, that's not how that's supposed to work.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool strategy until you hit a team that can just stonewall it.
But anyway, back to this team. Who's your standout player? Obviously, I mean, it's kind of hard to go past VG Master, but did you have any other suggestions for standouts?
I think a lot of people were surprised by Tomo. She's a very new player. Her stats were pretty rough. I think playing her, though, she definitely didn't feel like a weak link, like you'd kind of expect with a random Taz player joining a very well-established team of Canberra players. I think kind of a symptom for this whole team, with the exception of VG, is they don't quite use panels enough, I don't think. So a lot of the time they're in the open, which is why they needed to play offensively, because I think the defense dropped a fair bit. Often it was just like Tomo being pinched from both doors and just getting railed, because their outside defenders would kind of try to play without panels and just get a bit railed.
Especially with all the massive sight lines that there were as well, right? Like, you needed to be very conscious of, like, always being on a panel, otherwise you would get sniped by someone on the other side of the arena.
And I think it's kind of the Canberra playstyle that we saw with both of their teams, is a lot of play in the open, which I think they got punished for a bit. But no, I thought in the games that I played against them, Tomo was the standout player because we weren't struggling with the outside defenders. It was Tomo that was railing CV, but yeah.
I like Tomo.
Yeah, and I struggled to get her out as well. Like, she was one of the better anchors I versed in the competition, honestly. I think it's just as soon as she got kicked out of the base, she was doing the same thing of just walking around without panels, just trying to reactivate on the door and hoping to get in.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of advice for these you know, whether we see this same, we might see like the Fall Dragons lineup or something, but just some advice for these players going into future prenuts and stuff.
Yeah, I think just focus on like keeping your tag ratio up, not giving away free deaths. Just the most important thing you can do on defense is just stay alive. So, well, it's common to a certain point, but if both duels die, then you can't, comms won't save the anchor. So I think just a bit more focus on that, staying alive, using your panels, will really help this team out a lot.
All right. Yeah. Use your bloody panels and watch the maybe tune into the Laser Sports Academy beginner paneling video. Maybe.
Calling a very experienced team to watch the beginner paneling video.
Well, you know, if you're not using panels, you're not using panels, huh?
Got it.
It's all fun and games. All fun and games.
Yeah.